So for those of you who don't know Veronika, if you're new, she's a biologist turned intuitive guide, which is pretty cool. So she's got like a little more little more knowledge of the body than some of us, okay? She's also a certified quantum healer who works with high achievers, helping them break free of subconscious blocks that have kept them trapped in unhealthy relationship patterns. I'm totally going to go off for a minute and just say I love what she does because I was in a narcissistic relationship too, and I was there for 10 years, and it took me a good 4 or 5 to kind of figure out how the hell do I move on with my life. I wasted a lot of time stuck in rumination, wondering what the hell to do, feeling like nothing was good enough, kind of in that like anxious, oh my God, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I wish that I had found someone at the time who could have helped me get out of that, shortcut that, and move on with my life. So she draws on her own life experience with having experienced decades of psychological abuse that resulted in a full body shutdown for her. And after leaving her marriage of 16 years, she uncovered the hidden root causes and now lives a life of full physical health and joy. Who wants that? Go ahead and hit the chat. Hell yes, right? So using a combination of intuitive energy work, quantum healing, and tools that she's developed, with years of trial and error, she guides people like you to achieve the same results she's created in life and relationships, where you get to be your true and authentic self. So that's really what we're here to do today. The masterclass is about how to be yourself, because when you trust yourself, that's how you start to awaken your intuition. But you're going to hear that from Veronika. That's just a tiny little preview of where we're going. So again, if you guys have any questions, direct those toward me so that Veronika can focus, and I'll let her take over from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. I'm so happy to... I was muted. Now I'm unmuted.
That was my bad. I was trying to mute myself.
Am I still muted?
You're good now.
Okay, awesome. So it just popped up on my screen that I was muted after I unmuted. So anyways, thank you, Michelle. I appreciate you being here and helping out. And thank you everyone here for joining. I'm so excited to talk with you all today. I think I might say this at other times, but this is like one of my, I'm super, super excited about what we're learning, what I'm sharing with you all today. Maybe a little more so than other times, because what I'm sharing with you today really is the foundational process and tools to feeling calm and peace and joy on a regular basis. And I really believe that if we all could embody these practices, we would literally change the world. And that is why I decided to actually, these processes are part of a bigger program and process that I teach, but I decided to pull them out because they're just so important, and they're the things that can get you just huge changes in your life and relatively quickly. So I'm really, really excited to be here. And as Michelle mentioned, as I put in the chat, do share why you are here today. You know, I want to make sure that you're here to learn the things that we're actually going to be talking about. And you can put in, you know, what you are excited to learn, or you can put in like why, like what brought you here? Like, is there something you're struggling with that you're like, oh my gosh, I need this masterclass so that I can resolve this for myself. It can be high level. You don't have to give your personal details. Okay, getting some love in the chats. I'm not going to be paying attention to the chats for the most part today until the very end. So I am going to allow time at the end today for your questions and answers. And if you have questions while I'm sharing the teachings that I've got here today, you're welcome to pop them in the chat, and then Michelle will let me know at the end that there are questions. But I do have my chat open because I do want to know why you're here. So to trust your intuition more, awesome. Some love for my private client because you're an awesome coach. To be more aware of how strong my intuition is. Thank you. And Eric is here because I've gone through some work. Carol's a therapist looking for things to use with my clients, like how to really get rid of triggers. So, Carol, we're going to be talking about therapy here a little bit today, and no disservice meant to therapists in general. Some people don't. Some therapists have not actually learned these processes, and so as a result, they're not able to share it with their clients. And I'm super excited to have you here today because, again, the more people that know how to do this and go through this process, the more we can change the world. So make sure you have a pen and paper handy. You're going to want to take notes. And you're also going to want to jot down your questions so that I can get to them at the end. Okay, so I'm going to just share briefly about this sort of calm and peace that you can feel. And this is all connected to your intuition. So some of you are here because you want to connect with your intuition more. And the things that I'm talking about today, obviously this is about awakening your intuition. So you're going to hear how this is all connected to awakening your intuition. The first part of that is to be able to distinguish what is your intuition and what are all your emotions. And when you're able to be in a place of calm and peace and focus and presence, that's when you can really hear your intuition. So that's really the first step. So I'm going to be going through some different steps and things that you need to be aware of. So if you're taking notes, that's the first one, is to be in a state of calm, presence, and focus so that you can be free from triggers, so that you can connect with your intuition. And I'm just going to get personal for a moment. And you all who work with me know that it's my intention to always be authentic with you all and let you know what's been going on with me as well. And Michelle, did you see that request from Edith? Let me know if you can't do it from your end. So what I want to share with you all is some of you may know by now that I've had some kind of major things happening in my life over the past couple weeks. And in fact, that's why this masterclass was rescheduled from last week. I've actually had 3 major life-altering event, actually 4. They keep growing. They're growing on each other, y'all. I've had 4 life-altering events in the past 2.5 weeks. And it's, kind of, it can be a little earth-shattering sometimes. And what I wanted to share is what others have observed about me during this time. So one of my private clients shared, and I don't know what's going on for you, but I appreciate how present and focused you are with your clients. It's quite an amazing skill. So I wanted to say thank you for that. And that skill is what we're talking about today, because that is how you get to that intuition, to be able to make better decisions, to be able to create the kinds of relationships that you want. And during these 2.5 weeks and all the time, I am using these processes and principles that I share with you, that I'm sharing with you here, and that I share with my clients. And that's exactly what allowed me to have this focus and presence that my private client noticed. I just realized my microphones are really far away from me. I tend to do that. I'll move that closer. It sounds like y'all can hear me fine. And then the other one I'm actually sharing from my son. I don't do very often. He says, I'm really lucky to have you as my mom. And I'm just going to let you all read it because I'm going to get choked up. So what he said is, it's amazing how calm you stayed through all this. If you'd reacted differently, things would be very different for me right now. Now, he's not somebody that normally shares these kinds of emotions with me or in general. So again, the reason that I wanted to share those specific quotes with you is because they're recent, and to show you how, when you do these practices and put these principles into when you implement them, you are able to have this calmness and peace and focus, even when you've got massive things, life-altering events going on in your life. So for those of you, I'm curious how many of y'all want that. Go ahead and put calm in the chat box. If you're like, heck yes, I want to be calm and focused and present, even when crazy ass things are going on. Yeah, lots of people. All right, awesome. So what I want to share is that these are skills that when you master, you can have you can have this with you all the time. And so in light of that, we are going to take a moment to get focused and present. So if anybody who's listening is driving, do not do this while you're driving. If anybody is you can listen, just don't follow along too carefully. If anyone is multitasking, I encourage you to just give yourself the gift of being present and to stop multitasking for just a few moments, at least, if not for the whole time. And just take a moment right now to just notice that you're really present here. You're really present in the space that you're in. And as you allow yourself to become present, you also start noticing your breath. And as you do that, you're not forcing your breath. You're just simply noticing that you are breathing. And as you do that, your breath may on its own slow and relax and deepen. There's no need to force it to do so. Take a moment to scan your body with your mind from head to toe, feeling what you're sitting on, noticing the air that's around you, the temperature. Being fully present in this moment. And now take a moment to remember why you're here. And just ask what brought you here today. Many of you said intuition. What is causing you to not be connected to your intuition? What is it that you want to be free from? What is it that's happening in your life that you're like, I need to spend this time on a Wednesday at a masterclass? What is going on for you that you're seeking help? Whatever that is, whether it's an emotion or a situation or a pattern, allow yourself to bring that up in your mind's eye. The situation, emotion, or pattern that you wish to be free from. I'll just be quiet for a moment while you connect with that. And now take a moment to visualize yourself free from that situation. You are now connected with your intuition. You are now calm, focused, and present. In your mind's eye, look around your life. Look around where you are within your mind, in this space where you are now connected with your intuition, connected with peace and calm. What does your life look like? What is different for you from the way it is now? When you're connected with your intuition, what is different for you than from what it is now? Really tune in and feel in your body this life that you have in this future version of you. And from this space, from this future space, look at your present day life and ask yourself very honestly, what is stopping me from getting to this place? And how is staying stuck where I am right now impacting me? How is where I'm staying stuck impacting me? And now bring your attention back. Say goodbye to your future self. Bring your attention back into your present day body. Bring your awareness into the center of your chest. And bring into the center of your chest that feeling you had from your future self, that version of you who is connected to their intuition, their calm, their focus. Bring that feeling back into the center of your chest. When you feel fully connected with your present day self, go ahead and grab your pen and notepad. And I ask you 2 questions. I ask you, what is stopping you from getting to that place in the future that you want, connected to your intuition? And write that down. What is stopping you? And how is staying stuck impacting you? Go ahead and write that down. And those of you that wish, you can share that in the chat box as well. What is stopping you from moving forward? And how is that impacting you? I'm just going to wait for just a second while you all write, because I'm going to move forward with the presentation, and I really want you all to be able to watch and listen. So I'm just going to give you just a few seconds to jot down your notes, and then we'll keep going. So the impact is not growing, from Karen, and she says, nothing is stopping me. Okay. Nothing is stopping me. I'm a little curious about that. Okay, so while you all go ahead and jot that down or put it or write in the chat box, sometimes there's a delay. We're just going to go ahead and keep moving. So, Kathleen says, I am stopping me, but I don't know why. Yes. Okay. So you don't know why. So oftentimes we don't know why we're not able to move forward. And sometimes that can be a difficult question. So thank you, Kathleen, for saying that and noticing that. So we're going to be talking a little bit later today. I'm going to be talking a little later in this presentation about why it is that you don't know why and how you can maybe start getting unstuck. It's really important. Okay, I believe nothing should be stopping me, but it has for many, many years. So maybe, Karen, you might be, I don't know, but you might be in that same place as Kathleen, as you're not quite sure why you're stuck. So that's awesome, because we're going to be touching on that today. And fear. Yeah, fear is a big one. Thank you, Debbie, for sharing that. Okay, so you guys are stuck. You're not quite sure what's keeping you stuck. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what is this costing you? So being stuck and not being connected to your intuition and not feeling that peace and calm, put trigger in the comment box if you guys are people who struggle with triggers from past relationships. We're going to talk a little bit about triggers. So we got trigger, we got people pleasing and rumination. Okay, lots of triggers. Awesome. I asked that question because nobody said that earlier, and I wanted to clarify that because we're going to be talking about triggers quite a bit today. y'all deal with triggers. Okay. Okay, so what are triggers costing you? Just had to double check. Make sure y'all are in the right place. So at a previous workshop, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this if you've heard this before, but it's so critical to realize how staying stuck is costing you. So at a previous class, we actually did a quick poll and asked people how much time they spent in ruminations or triggers, right? Which is when if you are triggered into an emotion and then you stay in that negative emotion for a long period of time. So we estimated, on my end, I estimated 30 minutes a day, and people actually responded that it was more like 2 hours a day in spinning and painful emotions or ruminations, which is thinking about something over and over and over again, right? If you're only spending 30 minutes a day, that means you're spending 7.5 days a year in emotions, triggers, ruminations. If you're closer to the 2 hours a day, which was what the average was in this other group, then you're spending about a month out of your year on triggers, ruminations, painful emotions. I want to know, what would you do at that time? Go ahead and put in the chat box. If you could regain a week to a month out of your year, what would you do at that time? Vacation on a beach. Yes. Not a beach person myself, but definitely the vacation. We need more vacations, especially Americans. Have fun, relax, and work on my goals. Another lovely vacation. Vacation and read, travel, learn ukulele. Awesome. I love that. Cool. So the other part about what is it costing that I want to talk about is literally money, because sometimes we don't think about how these kinds of painful situations can really translate into where we're spending our money. So a lot of people that I work with have been in a divorce, or either currently in or have been going through a divorce. So I'm going to give some other examples if this isn't you, but just briefly talk about if you high conflict divorce. And actually, this isn't even high conflict. The example I'm going to give is actually just your standard average regular divorce. So if you're not familiar, if you're going through a divorce and you want to retain a lawyer, the minimum is typically $5,000 for a retainer. And then they, use that retainer as you go through the process. If all you're doing is filing and have one court appearance, you're pretty much going to use up that $5,000 retainer, depending on your lawyer and the team and all that kind of stuff. So if you're in a divorce that takes a year, which is pretty quick for anyone who's not familiar with that, and you require 4 court appearances, you're spending $20,000 on a divorce. Okay, so I'm about to share with you, I told you I was going to share some principles that you might want to write down. About to share with you one of the key principles I want you to take away from today. So, okay, Veronika, I'm spending $20,000 on lawyers. I need lawyers. So how is what we're talking about today, how is connecting to my intuition going to save me money with legal fees? That makes no sense. Okay, here's how. When you shift internally, so we're going to be talking about shifting into calm and peace and connecting with your intuition. When you shift internally, everything around you also shifts. Now, there's several reasons for that. One is just sort of maybe obvious psychological reasons. When you act a certain way, people respond in a certain way. So the less confrontational you are with somebody, the more quickly you're able to get to compromise. Now, talking about narcissists, not so much. However, in general, right, the way you act is going to influence the people around you. So that's sort of an obvious way. There's also energetic ways that has to do with quantum science, which I'm not going to get into here, but I will in the Freedom Foundations course if you're interested in learning more about that. It has to do with quantum science and how particles actually communicate and interact with each other. So when you shift your internal state, so that's one of the principles you want to walk away with today. When you shift your internal state, everything around you is going to shift. And that includes things like going through a high conflict divorce. So I had a client that I was working with who was going through a divorce with a narcissistic ex, had been in negotiations and discussions for 9 months and wasn't making any headway. And we did a reprinting session and cleared some stuff out. And I kid you not, 3 days after that session, the separation agreement was signed by her ex. And she messaged me, she was like, I wasn't expecting that to happen so quickly. So your internal energetic space is going to impact everything around you. So there's so many ways where this is actually the reason I'm bringing it up, even if some of you maybe aren't going through a divorce, is because these 2 topics I'm about to share, high conflict divorce and mental health is the next one, really break my heart, because I hear people quite often be like, I can't invest in something for myself because I need to pay for lawyers because I need lawyers. And you do need lawyers. But you can use them a lot less if you're not constantly in conflict and if it's not going on for years and years and years. So I'm not saying this work is going to mean you don't need lawyers, but you're just able to use them very specifically rather than them just sucking up all of the and causing all this conflict and turmoil. So when you shift yourself internally, things around you shift, and that means that you can spend less money on things like lawyers. Mental health treatment. So emotional abuse, psychological abuse, which many of you have dealt with, results in long, anxiety, depression, suicide, substance abuse, eating disorders, chronic illnesses. So those of us that have gone through emotional abuse, psychological abuse, including, narcissistic parents and things that may be more covert, we have a lot of things that we have to deal with in our lives. 1 week of intensive inpatient treatment is $6,000 in Arizona. So this would be, if someone's suicidal and they need to go for inpatient, which is not uncommon. If someone has an eating disorder, it's going to take way more than 1 week. Weekly therapy, I wanted to bring up because that's a resource that's available to a lot of people. So you might be like, okay, Veronika, I really don't think I'm ever going to need intensive inpatient treatment. So therapy is available through many people's insurance. You may have a copay of $30, for example. In that case, you're spending about $1,500 a year for one person, or spending close to $5,000 a year for a family. Now, why is this important? We're going to talk a little bit about why talk therapy is not going to necessarily help you with triggers, ruminations, and connecting with your intuition. So you may be spending $1,500 a year on therapy and still dealing with these issues that you're working on now and trying to be free from. Okay, so let's move on from that. So what you may be wondering is, okay, that's great, Veronika. I can connect with my intuition. I can be calm and peaceful, and you have some secret magical tool to do that. If it's possible to be free from all of these things, why has no one, why don't other people know about this? Why is this big secret that only you know about? Yeah, you don't. I'm not the only one that knows about it. But here's why, okay? And the answer is actually quite simple. I'm going to be going back and forth between the PowerPoint because I like being able to see y'all and talk to y'all. The world right now is the thing that's given the most value right now is our mind, our consciousness, thinking, science, right? Is there scientific proof of things like that? We believe, and it's because our brains do separate us from other animals, and so our ego really likes to think about our brains and how our minds are so important. So we really focus on the cognitive aspects of everything, including healing. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of, and you're going to see in a moment, the foundations that you need to that you're going to want to work on in order to connect with your intuition, and your cognitive is one of those foundations. Okay, so it is important. However, it is not the only thing, which is what is happening in our world right now. We value our minds above everything else. So tools like talk therapy, journaling, positive affirmations, and things like that are all based in our minds. And even some meditations and alternative practices actually focus quieting the mind and things like that. We don't actually tap into other aspects of our system. Okay, so I paused here because I said system. We don't tap into other aspects of our system. You're going to hear me use that word. So I'm going to come back later and talk about system, but it's really important to understand that you as an organism are a system. You're not just a brain, okay? So those of you that were like, I don't know what's stopping me, this is one of the reasons why you're stuck. It's one of the reasons so many people stay stuck, is because you are trying to outthink. You're trying to outthink your triggers or other things that you're dealing with, and that's not where the problem is. Okay, so I'm just going to share briefly a client talking about her experience with triggers and how this work actually was able to shift her out of triggers. And then I'm going to go into the steps for how to connect with your system and start connecting with your intuition.
My name's Arpana, and I'm in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So I started working with you after about 15 months of doing cognitive behavioral therapy. And I remember one conversation with my therapist where I was like, you've given me all these tools and all these resources and everything's going well. I think I've made a lot of progress. I said the one thing that I would like to really continue working on is my triggers. So with those triggers, I had said, they're still there, they're less frequent, they're less intense, but how do I work to kind of alleviating them completely? And what he said to me was a little bit hopeless. And what he said was, you know, unfortunately, based on what you've experienced, what you've been through, those triggers are a reality of your life now. And they will always be with you. And I thought, so I said, you know, so there's nothing I can do. And he said, no. But he said, unfortunately, they will always be with you. So these are the tools that I'm giving you. These are strategies that you already know. And that's how you will manage them. And I thought to myself, no, I'm not going to live like this. I'm not going to live in fear of when a trigger is going to hit, when it's not going to hit, whether it's going to take me out of my life and not be present for, you know, a day, 2 days, a week, what that looks like, me not being present in my life, me not being present with my child. So I thought, nope, that's not okay. And it's not okay by me. And I will find another option. Right.
How
So
are you doing now with your triggers?
they're much less frequent. They're when they do come, it's like minutes, but compared to where I was when I was sitting in my therapist's office, right, like 5 months ago, like it's night and day. It's amazing.
All right. I lost my Zoom for some reason, but there we go. Okay. So you heard firsthand here from Arpana how sometimes the tools that we're getting, there's a belief out there that we cannot shift out of some of the pain that we're experiencing. And I hear that in other aspects too, like chronic pain or depression. And you absolutely can. Absolutely can heal from those things. So painful emotions, which is essentially what triggers are, including ruminations and triggers, are powered by an imprint. Now, I know there's some people here who are familiar with my work. So you're familiar with imprints. So just bear with me. We're going to briefly explain what imprints are, and then we're going to move forward to understanding your system and how to connect with the foundations of your system so that you can move into that focus and presence and the calm. So this is an overview of what imprints are. I'm not going to read this whole slide to you, but it basically is just there for you to have an understanding of the background and the biology. So in short, imprints are the way that we as mammals, it's the way our brains work. And it was discovered in the 1870s, and we understand that mammals and birds do take on memories that are basically stamped into our brain, and you can find different parts of your brain where there are what biologists and psychologists call imprints. And these occur early in development from 0 to 7 years. And they're there so that we as animals, as humans, are able to know how to survive. So you're basically mimicking your parents so that you know how to have a mate, you know how to eat food or how to find food, be a hunter and all those kinds of things. So that's the purpose biologically of imprints, is so that you are able to, your body, your system is able to be trained in the things that you need to know in order to survive. And in that definition, they occur early in development. Some say 0 to 3, some say 0 to 7. So more broadly speaking, and when I use the word imprint, I want to clarify that I do use the word more broadly. So an imprint is a message that you took on from an experience in your life. And I'm going to give an example of what that message might be and how it may be impacting you. So the reason I say I use it a little more broadly is because you can have experiences in your life that really affect you, right? So that's why you may have trauma, big T, or even little t trauma. So if you've been in a relationships, I was married for 16 years, I definitely walked away from that with things that are operating my subconscious, which is an imprint. I didn't necessarily experience those in early life, but I experienced those in my marriage, right? So I use the word a little bit more broadly to include a broader portion of your life. So just quickly, how does this happen? So there's an event. So an event might be that you were neglected as a child, your needs were not met. So the imprint, the message may be, I'm not worthy of my needs being met. And then the results of that as an adult now is that you may actually be subconsciously choosing relationships where you are not valued. because your imprint is telling you that you're not worthy of your needs being met. So these messages that we have that are running our subconscious, they kind of create a reality that then matches that belief, essentially. So that's why if you're somebody who's had recurring painful patterns in your life, whether it's relationships or difficulty with money or things like that, and you've done everything. You're like, I've done all the things and it's not changing. So a few of you mentioned right at the beginning that you are feeling stuck and you don't know how to move forward. It's because these imprints are in your system, again, in your system. So they're in your subconscious, but they're also in other parts of your system. And we're going to talk about that. So your imprints also, so this is how you may be subconsciously actually making choices on a subconscious level. So that's how your mind may be affected by imprints. But your imprints also magnetize things into your life. So there's an energetic component to it as well, which is why it's important to address your whole system when you are wanting to clear those things out. Okay, so one of the number one keys is that talking about your triggers or talking about your imprints is not going to change them. So that's why some of the things may not be working for you. If you're focused only on the cognitive aspects of healing, talk therapy, journaling, things like that, you may continue to stay stuck. Okay, so how do I change that? How do I shift that? So you want to shift that by understanding that you are a system made out of 6 different layers. Those of you that have attended one of my previous course may be like, wait, Veronika, you said there are 7 layers. Yes, there's 7, but there's 6 that you deal with. The 7th is external. So you are a system made of 6 different layers. And the foundational layers are the cognitive, the mind, the somatic, the body, and the emotional. And the 3 higher levels, the energetic layer levels, we're not going to talk about today, because those bottom layers are the key. They're the key to shifting into calm, and they're the key to connecting with your intuition. So if you're taking notes, and you want to write down that the second principle from today is that that you're made up of 6 layers, and that the foundational layers are the mind, the emotions, and the body. And to connect with your intuition, you need to be tuned in to those 3 layers. So sometimes people, you may be thinking like, I want to hear about the other 3 layers. Because those are the energetic layers. And a lot of times people think like that's sexy, or it just sounds like kind of fun and cool, like, oh, I can heal all my problems by doing, energy stuff. Or you may feel like you have a karmic relationship. That's, maybe you've had many lives with this person, and you may have gone through all kinds of different energetic processes, whether it's energy work or shamanic rituals or cord cutting and all that stuff, and it's not working. So if you've done those kinds of things and you're still stuck, it's very likely that you may have just bypassed. So you may have been doing some spiritual bypassing there. You may have bypassed the foundational levels, the somatic and the emotional. So now you know what imprints are, and you know that you're a system, right? So you want to address your imprints on all 6 layers, and you want to start on the 3 foundational layers. So more than likely, you've already done work on the cognitive level. And I say that again just because that is what our culture and our society values, and so people tend, and it's available to us, so we tend to go there. So I'm just going to briefly touch on that, and we're going to focus on the somatic and emotional levels to see how you can connect with your intuition and act on it, y'all. We're going to talk about that later, the difference between just knowing you have your intuition and acting on it, okay? So we're going to focus on the somatic and the emotional layers today, but I just want to briefly touch on that the cognitive layer is important. So understanding what it is that you're experiencing. So if your ex is a narcissist like mine was, learning that my ex was a narcissist was huge, blew my mind. Same thing with gaslighting. You may understand your childhood experiences, and that's really important. That's where talk therapy especially tends to be really helpful and beneficial, to really understand what is happening from my childhood that's showing up for me again, that's causing problems for me in my present day. So those are all really helpful. Well, often what I hear from people is, I get it. I understand. I know my ex is a narcissist. I know I have toxic patterns. I know I'm a avoidant attachment or anxious attachment. I know all these things, but my life is not changing. But give me a 1 in the comments, or you can write understand in the comments. If you're somebody who understands all the things, but things are not changing for you. Yeah, right. Okay. Awesome. So yeah, a lot of 1s and lots of understands in the chat box. So we're going to start with the somatic level or the physical level. I use those, and those are interchangeable, by the way, if anyone's wondering. Somatic just means your body. Oh, I guess I was supposed to share this to you guys, but we just talked about it. So you got this: mental, emotional, physical. You get stuck because you may be in the mental level. Okay, let's talk about the body for a minute. And you may have heard, or you may know, that memories are stored in the body. This is, and in fact, I'm curious if people know this. Put body in the chat box if you already know that that memories and emotions and things are stored in the body. So I'm not talking about like something happened, I had an emotional trauma and now I have an illness in my body. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about literally thoughts, literally memories are stored in the body. Okay, some of y'all, a lot of y'all know that. Okay, so we're just going to fly through the science of this because I always like to go back to the science. Yeah, understanding things have shifted a lot. Awesome. Okay, so the hypothesis that was posed by Dr. Gary Schwartz from the University of Arizona was that all dynamical systems that contain recurrent feedback loops store information and energy to various degrees. All right, head exploding. What on earth does that mean? So in this particular case, when they're talking about dynamical systems, they're talking about the systems in the body. So a system would be your digestive system, your circulatory system, your nervous system, things like that. So those systems in your body that contain a feedback loop. So a feedback loop are things that have neurological pathways. And along those pathways, information is transmitted and then information comes back. So that's the feedback. So like your heart races, something happens and it triggers your heart to race. And then something else happens and it triggers your heart to slow down. So that's what that means. So all of your systems store information and energy to various degrees. So the study that they did with one of the ways that they documented this has actually been known or believed for a long time, but one of the studies that documented this was with organ donor recipients. And what they discovered is that the recipients experienced changes that were related to the donors that couldn't be explained by other factors. So basically, the donors were having preferences of food that they didn't have before that came directly from the donors. And the heart was actually the organ that had this occur the most often. And so the result of that, what they discovered from that, is that the organs literally have memories, right? So your musical preference is stored in one of your organs, your sexual likes and dislikes is stored, etc. And so the bottom line of that is basically our brain is an organ, and all of our organs are basically little brains. So all of your organs have the ability to store memories, they have the ability to share information, they have the ability to tell other parts of your body to certain things. So we tend to think of the brain that's in our head as the end all and be all, when in reality, again, we are a system with all these little brains everywhere that are actually also storing memories and contributing to our decisions. And in fact, here you'll notice that it says cellular memories, organs have memories, but the result was that cellular memory is a potential explanation. So it may not just be systems, but it may actually be down to your cells, which is something that people experience but has not been studied quite as deeply. Okay, so what does this have to do with what we're talking about? When you're triggered or when you're ruminating, a lot of times it's actually that an event, something is happening that's triggering a memory that's stored somewhere in your body. And you are actually, Eric's here today, and you are actually responding to a memory that's in your body, right? So I'm going to turn this off for a second. So many people who have experienced trauma or emotional challenges and difficulties are actually disconnected from their body. I know many of you here are familiar with dissociation. So one of the things that's really important is for you to be able to connect with your body and to really tune in to what your body is telling you. So I'm curious if people here feel that they are connected to your body. So go ahead and put, I think I already asked you to put body, right? I've lost my chat box. Yeah, I already asked you to put body. So put connected in the chat box. If you're like, yeah, I'm connected to my body. I feel what I feel and understand what's happening in my body. We have 2 people so far, sometimes 3 people. Okay. Somewhat, I think so. Okay. So for those of you that say, yes, I am connected in my body, write calm in the comments if calm and peace is your natural state. If you're able to maintain calm, even when you're experiencing major life-altering events. And you can put no if that's not the case. Yeah. Awesome, Michelle. Happy to hear that. Michelle's gone through one of my programs, so I got most of the time and a lot of no's, right? So it's really important, because when you start talking about these concepts and you say, oh, you need to connect with your body, people will say, I'm connected to my body. But if you're connected to your body, there's two things that are important about being connected to your body, okay? So we're talking about different principles. So we learned about imprints, and then we learned about the 6 layers and the 3 foundational layers. And so now we are going to talk about how to connect with your intuition and how to use your body to connect with your intuition, okay? So first of all, we talked about imprints being stored in our system. So you've probably dealt with some imprints that are in your mind through different things. You want to be able to trace imprints in your body, and the wounded imprints, I should say, because imprints are just messages that you take on. So you can have positive imprints too, y'all. So you want to be able to trace where wounded imprints are stored in your body, and you want to be able to release them. Then you want to tune into your body so deeply that you are actually receiving information from all these little brains that you've got. So most of the time when people try to make decisions, they're listening to their big brain. So if you're truly connected with your body, 1, you're clearing out the trauma that's stored there. And 2, you're listening to that inner knowing in such a way that you hear the messages coming from your body. And then you make decisions based on that, in addition to the other ways. And when you do that, that's what results in that calm and peace that we've been talking about. All right, so I'm going to share briefly Eric's experience. Eric is here today. So he went through a program last year where we actually talked about these principles, and he was actually he implemented these things that we are talking about here today. So I'm going to share his experience so you can hear how it impacted him.
One of the biggest things is I don't get as upset or angry with things as I used to before. If you're not familiar with like Asperger's or it's part of the autism spectrum disorder. A lot of people with Asperger's have explosions and meltdowns, and I mean it basically looks like a hardcore tantrum, and it's it can be like just an instant, or it can last for a while before starting the actual work in the group. I mean, just little things like me dropping my keys. I was just like, what am I doing? And just like exploded myself. As I was going through the program even and doing some of the work, I was a lot calmer and a lot more peaceful. It was so weird. Like that was something that was so like obvious. The obvious change. A few of my friends would have like, you're so much calmer and confident now. Like what's going on? He was able to see, and it's like as I was going through, it's like, wow, it's really making a difference. He commented while I was still in the middle of the program. He told me like, you're so much happier and you seem a lot more peaceful and at peace. Like I can see you, like he's like, the way you walk is even different. Yeah. So he's noticed like, yeah, all these things.
Yay, thank you, Eric. So you can hear firsthand how, and Eric is here today, so he could attest to this further. I don't think it said it in that clip, but it was within about 6 weeks of implementing some of these processes that he started noticing the changes within himself, and other people were noticing it. So as I said earlier, it does take mastery of these skills and practice, but if you implement them consistently, then you actually do see change very quickly. And then you just keep practicing to really tune into that intuition. So that's the somatic level, right? So we talked about clearing imprints on the somatic level and also tuning into all the little brains that you've got in your body to be able to connect with your intuition. So I'm going to touch briefly on the emotional level. So similar to the body, right? You want to be connected to your emotional level. So again, I want you to feel into, do you know how you are feeling right now on an emotional level? What emotions are coming up for you right now? I'd like for you to think about that, and you can pop that in the chat. And while you do that, I'm going to keep talking. So what emotion are you feeling right now? So it's interesting because I think many of us are tuned, or at least believe we're tuned into our emotions. Sometimes people come to me and say, I don't know what my emotions are at all. But what's interesting is that twice last week, I received questions about whether what somebody was experiencing was a trigger or whether it was just an emotion. So I'm going to explain briefly how I define trigger, by the way, right? So a trigger, the way I use that word, some people just use that to mean a strong emotion. Our goal in life, my goal in life at least, is not to be without emotion, right? So when we're on our healing journey, a lot of times we're like dealing with emotions and we're processing emotions, and it can feel really heavy, right? And we're like, I'm trying to be done with all these emotions. However, our goal is not to just be like flat and emotionless and be robots. Like, we're humans with emotions, and emotions make our life colorful. And as I'm going to share in a minute, they're also very important to provide information to connect with your intuition. Okay, so I'm going to come back to that. So emotions, we want to feel happy and joy and pleasure. We also want to feel anger or anxiety at the right times when it's not a trigger, because it gives you information. And I'm going to share more about that. So what is a trigger? A trigger is when there's a situation that's going on that's triggering, that's poking at a wounded imprint, is really what's happening. You may not know that, but it's poking at something, and then your emotional response is disproportionate to the situation, or it's overwhelming, like Arpana mentioned in the video that I showed earlier in this talk, right? That she would be in her emotions for hours or days, right? So that's how you know, like, it's a trigger rather than a healthy emotion that's an indicator of information. So a trigger is when your imprints are being poked and your emotion is either disproportionate to the situation or it doesn't match the situation. Like, you're like, I have massive anxiety and I don't know why, right? So those are triggers, okay? So how do you know when something is a trigger and when it's an emotion? Because we actually want to connect with our emotions. Emotions are our indicator system. So if you want to connect with your intuition, you want to be able to understand when an emotion is giving you information that something is wrong or that you need to act in a certain way, right? So you want to be able to identify when it's trigger and when it's actually providing you with information. So this is one of the keys to really connecting with your intuition. Because sometimes I hear people say, my intuition told me whatever it told them to do. And then we kind of like peel it apart. And I'm like, I think maybe that was your emotion that was actually being caused by an imprint. It wasn't really your intuition, right? And it's really hard to distinguish if you're not used to practicing and understanding when's a trigger. So when you have a trigger, an emotional trigger, then you can deal with it and you can process it and you can use all your tools to process it. And when it's an indicator, then you want to tune into it and be like, what are my emotions telling me? Right? So that's the second part of really being able to tune into your intuition. So just realized I forgot to say something. Okay. So if you're here because you want to connect with your intuition, then the ways that the three foundational layers support you with that is one, understanding, right? Understanding yourself, understanding the world and how you move through it is really important, because that's when you are able to identify things like triggers or red flags, which are relevant. We're going to talk about that next, why red flags are relevant. So the understanding is really important. A lot of people tend to have the understanding, but sometimes mental maps are also important. And I do that with clients too, is mental mapping. Then on your somatic level, you want to trace the trauma in your body and clear it out. And you want to get practice hearing what your body is saying. And then on the emotional level, you want to be able to tune into when is it a trigger and when is it an indicator, your emotions or your indicator system. If it's a trigger, you want to use all your tools to process it. And if it's an indicator system, then you use that to be able to make decisions. So those processes are really important in being able to connect with your intuition and move forward confidently, making decisions and knowing that it is your intuition and it's not a trigger. Okay. I'm curious because we're running out of time a little bit, but we're almost done, so that's perfect. And we're gonna have time for Q&A. I'm available for the next half hour for Q&A. But I'm curious if people here put red flag in the comment if you want to know why red flags are irrelevant. If you're interested in that, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. Christine, I think you know why red flags are irrelevant. Okay, y'all want to know. You're like, you promised that you were going to talk about this. You're like, I signed up and sat here for 60 minutes because I wanted to know why red flags are irrelevant. All right, we'll talk about it. Okay, so first of all, what is a red flag? Okay, and I'm going to talk about how this is connected to your intuition. Red flags are relevant if you're connected to your intuition. Oh, I just gave away the secret. I don't have to talk anymore. Okay, so what is a red flag? I've had people ask me that too. What is a red flag? A red flag really is just something that it says that the person that you're having an experience with is not in alignment with you. So for sure, there are red flags, and we can ask our therapist that's here, maybe, I don't know what her specialty is, but about red flags. For sure, there's a list of red flags that we can make that are going to be pretty consistent, manipulation tactics and things like it. We could go on and on about it. Okay. But here's one of the reasons why they're irrelevant. There's actually three reasons why red flags are irrelevant. Okay. So first of all, people are like, I want to know what the red flags are. I'm curious, for those of you that have been in toxic relationships, how many of you saw the warning signs early on? Put early in the chat box. If you were in a relationship and you saw the red flags early on. Yeah. Like so many of you, I just see early, like just flying through. Okay. That's why red flags are irrelevant. You all know what the red flags are, but you didn't listen. And I did the same thing, right? No judgment. That's what we do. We know what the red flags are, but we don't listen to ourselves, the parts of us, the inner voice that's screaming at us, that something's not okay. So that is the part that you want to really cue into, is not so much what is a red flag, but how do I actually listen to that inner voice and take action? So there's other reasons why red flags are irrelevant. One of them is because they may be different for different people, right? But it doesn't matter, because you guys all know what the red flags are for you, right? So when you are really tuned in to your foundational levels, and even if you're tuned into the next 3 levels, but honestly, if you're tuned into your foundational levels, your cognitive, especially your somatic, and your emotional without triggers, so you have to be clear of imprints to be able to do this. Then you can listen to that inner knowing, that voice is telling you something is not right. I don't know what's not right, but something is not right. And then you're able to then take the next step, which is act on it. And then you're able to have that trust and confidence. And one of the things I hear a lot when people implement this process is they start effortlessly setting boundaries. Boundaries is another thing. People want to know how to set boundaries. When you learn how to be really in touch with your system and your intuition, your system knows what your boundaries are. The thing is that it's difficult for you to communicate with them because there's probably an imprint blocking that for you. When you're connected with your system, you're able to start effortlessly communicating and setting your boundaries, even if no one's ever taught you how to do it. So red flags are irrelevant because you all know what the red flags are. And when you're living from your inner knowing, from your intuition, then you're able to actually take action confidently and not make that same mistake again. You're not going to make the same mistake again when you're connected with your intuition. So I'm going to share a clip here from Chris, who experienced connecting with his intuition and how that impacted him.
So I've been working with Veronika for just over 6 months, and my life has changed dramatically over that period. I had been in a really bad relationship, and that was about 5 years ago that ended, and I was looking for, I guess, some resolve, and I was thinking of that relationship in the past, living in the past every single day, and those thoughts were quite, I guess, annoying to me because it was preventing me from moving forward in my life and affecting so many aspects of my life. So I guess the biggest shift for me working with Veronika has been stopping that living in the past and dwelling on that relationship.
Chris, you had some unexpected positive effects too from this work around other relationships, like your friendships and your parents.
Yes.
Yeah, which were already relatively positive. That wasn't a focus of our work, but it was just sort of added bonus.
And I think that's all stemming from the really strong focus on intuition. I've always had a strong intuition, but I actually never, I didn't act on my intuition as I should have. So working with you, Veronika, has enabled me to have confidence in my intuition and go forward knowing with all my being that I am making the right decision. And I'm listening to my body and my feelings, and that's been extremely powerful for how I've been acting at work with my family, going on dates with new people, and it's instant. It's like, and I'm confident in my intuition now, and I'm, stepping forward with full confidence that I can trust it.
Stepping forward in full confidence that you can trust it. So that's the bottom line here, is that when you connect with these 3 foundational levels, you understand imprints, you clear them out, and you tune in and become really focused and present with your 3 foundational levels, you're able to step forward confidently with your intuition. Red flags don't matter. You're not going to make the same mistakes again. and you know you can have life-altering events and still just flow through them and be okay. And that's why this work is so important to me and why I wanted to share it with you, because we can change the world if we're all able to act out of our intuition. We can have start eliminating trauma and mental health problems and all those things. So as we wrap up here, we're going to end here with another experiential. So I'm going to walk you through a guided process here. I did promise you that if you want to master these skills, right? So we're here on the cognitive level today, y'all. If you want to be able to tune in into your emotional and somatic level and really be able to feel that calm and step into your intuition, I'll share briefly about how you can work with me further to do that. But first, we're going to go through an experiential, and then I'm going to stay on the line for questions, okay? So if you jotted down questions as we were going through today, I'm really happy to be able to answer those for you. So, lots of information. We're going to take a moment to just get present again. So again, if you're driving, you can listen, but don't follow along. Hopefully you're not. Hopefully by now you're not multitasking. Even if you are multitasking, give yourself these few moments, just like 2 minutes here, to just connect and be present. So we're going to start off like we did at the beginning. So just take a moment to become aware of yourself sitting or being present in your space. Noticing your body. Noticing how things around you smell and feel, the temperature. Just being present with this moment. We're going to do a little release. So there's a lot of talking and a lot of things may have come up for you. We just want to release that for a minute so that you can be present for yourself. So we're going to breathe together in a moment, and I'm going to explain it to you first. So I'm going to guide you to take a deep inhale in this case. So right now, just breathe normally and just be aware of your breathing as I talk. You're going to inhale into all of this learning and talking and interacting. And when you exhale, you're going to hold your inhale first. And then when you exhale, you're going to release any buzziness that might be going on for you. Okay? So pause at the bottom of your next inhale. And now take a long inhale, breathing into all of the learning, talking, emotions, and buzziness, and hold. And then with your exhale, release and visualize releasing anything that you want to release out of your system. We're going to do that one more time. So on your next inhale, inhale into anything that's not serving you right now. Hold and release with the exhale. Now take a moment to connect again with that version of you that we connected with at the beginning. This is a version of you that is connected with your intuition, confidently making decisions, feeling calm and peace daily, free from whatever brought you here today. Really tune into that future self. Suddenly experience yourself as though you are your future self. You can feel the emotions that they have. You can feel what it feels like to live that life, no longer stuck and confident in your intuition. Take a moment to allow the characteristics of your future self to really feel them in your body as though they are happening right now. I'm going to give you a moment to do that. So you're now embodying this version of yourself with intuition, with calm, with focus. And allow that future self to look back and look at you sitting here today in this masterclass. And notice again, what is stopping you from getting to your future self? Allow your future self to look at you sitting here and observe. Do I have the tools to get to my future self? Do I have the tools to get to that place of intuition, of confidence, of peace? Now bring your awareness back into your chest in your present day body, moving out of your future self into your present day self with that answer. You have that answer. Do I have the tools I need to get to that future version of me connected to my intuition? If you answered yes, fantastic, because I am so excited for people to get to that place. We're changing the world together, y'all. If you answered no, or maybe I'm not quite sure, then Freedom Foundations may be the bridge to your future self. And I'm going to share briefly about this opportunity to work with me. And then following this brief introduction to Freedom Foundations, I'm going to remain available to you for questions. Okay. So there's a lot of words on here, and I'm gonna, if you're interested, you can get all this information, right? But there's 3 basic steps within Freedom Foundations. One is to release the stress and anxiety, because most people have learned to breathe in a way that triggers your nervous system in such a way that you're actually creating anxiety and stress. So you really are not able to tune in, like we were talking about, to your system, to your emotions in your body, when you're in that state of stress and anxiety. So first is learning to regulate your nervous system so you can release stress and anxiety. Then, as we mentioned at the very beginning of this masterclass, is you want to shift your internal state. Remember, when you do that is when you can actually magnetize things to you, and you can also reduce the things that you're struggling with, like high conflict divorce or mental health, right? So you're going to learn how to rely on your emotions as an indicator system, which is, we just talked about how important that is. You're going to rewire your system to shift into these new states. And you're also going to learn how to embody that peace and calm, right? So you can effortlessly communicate boundaries. And then the whole goal, of course, is to reclaim your authentic self. And we're going to talk about, like what we talked about today. You're going to learn how to trace the trauma in your body so you can release it and free yourself from those triggers and ruminations. We're also going to talk a little bit, as I promised, about quantum science and how to magnetize things into your life. And we're also going to talk about how you can connect with your higher knowing in such a way that you can actually gain insights from yourself, insights that you may not get from your mind or body. So this program is going to begin in a week, and it's 8 weeks long. And the way this process works is a little bit different than these master classes, is that you have the opportunity to get direct input from me, which you will shortly in the Q&A. But you're going to learn a little bit, and then you're going to embody it, and then come back and ask questions on how you implemented it, and then learn a little bit more, and then be able to implement it and embody it. This is not about sitting in a class and reading and learning and listening, because that's all cognitive, right? We want to tune into our emotions as an indicator system so you can be connected with your intuition, and you want to connect with your body so that you can also be able to listen to all the little brains that you've got. You have lifetime access to all the materials. And so this is a $1,300 investment for being confidently connected to your intuition. And as we discussed earlier, you may already be spending $1,500 a year minimum on something like therapy, and still, like Arpana mentioned, not have the tools to be free from your triggers, and you're still losing a week or a month, a year even though you're already investing in something like therapy. So if you're like, okay, sign me up, this is for me, then I do have a special pricing for you of $1,100 that is good for the next 24 hours. So that deal will end of day on Thursday. And you can see the link here if you're interested and you're ready to jump in. And Michelle's also going to post that link in the chat box. And you can see all the information on there and make a decision for yourself and take advantage of that 24-hour early bird bonus. And then if you do have questions specifically about Freedom Foundations later on, we'll provide you with a link to connect with me one-on-one if that's something you want to do. So I'm super excited to have you in Freedom Foundations to bring, to support people in learning how to connect with their intuition and move into that space of calm and peace like Eric was talking about, and bringing that to more people because it's just such an important tool. And like I don't have the chat open, but like the therapist mentioned earlier, right? Like she wants tools to be able to bring to her clients because people just don't know how to do this. So I'm super, super excited about this program. And I am going to now open this up for the Q&A portion. So thank you all for being here. And I am going to take, I'm going to leave the spotlight on. I usually take the spotlight off because I can't see everybody when I'm spotlit, and I like to see y'all. But what happens then is you get recorded. So I'm going to leave my spotlight on so you don't get recorded. And we'll go ahead and be available for questions. So awesome. Thank you, Michelle, for putting that in the link.
Sure. So do you want people to like raise their hand on Zoom if they know how to do that, or just put a question in the chat? How should they?
Yeah, let's see. How many? Thank you for asking that. Oh, we have 28 people here. It usually works just fine for y'all to just unmute yourself and ask a question. I don't think I can see you if you raise your hand. Yeah. I'm looking at the chat box while I'm waiting for y'all.
I'm sure that there's some questions out there because y'all are still here. So there's something
That's right, exactly.
that you'd like to hear, or a question that you're hoping someone else would answer. Maybe you can be the one to ask for that person.
I did notice a comment that I'm trying to understand from Karen, which says, or when you listen and then ask the person for clarification, I listen to the person versus myself.
She had a comment earlier on about feeling like someone was lying to her and not trusting her gut. She listened to that person. I don't know if she wanted to speak more to that and ask.
Karen, are you here? Did you want some clarification about that? I think that's maybe talking about red flags and not listening to your red flags early on. Is that true? I am going to remove my spotlight so I can see y'all.
Yeah, that was what she was referring to. I'm not sure she's still here.
Okay, cool. So I can see y'all, so you can raise your hands. So I'm curious, does anyone have questions on how to connect with your intuition? Like, no. Was this totally clear? Or you're like, so much information, I'm still processing. Put a two in the chat box if you're like, so much information, I'm still processing. Put a 1 in the chat box if you're like, totally clear, I don't have any questions. Processing, yeah, sometimes it's hard to think of questions right offhand.
I have a question about like kind of differentiating between triggers and emotions. And I think the way I think about it compared to what you had said, and I think we're on the same page, but I'm just checking, is I think of triggers as like old stuff, old emotions that we've stored away. And that emotion stuff is what's happening today, is what I'm experiencing right now. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. Okay, I'm going to change my view again. Okay. Yeah, so triggers is old stuff and emotions is new stuff. That is, yes, that is true in the sense of what the emotions are responding to. So the emotion, a triggered emotion is responding to old stuff, and an indicator emotion, which is what we want to cue into, is connecting to new stuff. However, the emotions that we're having can be right now. Like right now I'm having anxiety. I mean, not me personally, but for example, right now I'm having anxiety. So I'm having this emotion in the present day, and you may not necessarily be aware that the anxiety is due to old stuff, So the fact that triggered emotions are connected to old stuff and indicator emotions are connected to new stuff, that may not be distinguishable to you in the moment. So I'll give an example. When I first started dating, like right after the divorce, and this may be obvious, but I was driving to my date and was overcome with anxiety. I had to pull the car over to the side of the road and call my friend. I was like, I don't think I can do this. And in that case, it's obvious I just got out of a divorce, narcissist. Obviously, it's not about the person I'm dating, right? Maybe obviously, but there could be that question. Am I having anxiety because there's something about this person that my system is telling me is not right and I shouldn't be going on a date with them, right? Which can also happen. So, while that definition is true, it's not necessarily a way to be able to distinguish. So I've got some clients here. I mean, maybe I'll put you on the spot. One of the ways that you can, there's 3 ways that you can distinguish triggers. One is, like I mentioned earlier, the emotion is disproportionate. So in the example that I gave, the anxiety of going on this date was so overwhelming. If it was my intuition, it would have felt different. And that's what in Freedom Foundations we work on, is understanding, am I feeling what is that intuitive emotion? What does that feel like in my body and in my system? So if they are disproportionate, and then also if they're recurring. So using anxiety again, if you're somebody who experiences anxiety like all the time, then that's definitely a good indicator that there's some imprint that's causing that, that can be looked at. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you for that, Carol. So Kathleen asked, the 3 foundational levels are mind, body, and emotions. Yeah, those are the 3 foundational levels. Oh, Michelle already answered that. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, Elizabeth, I'm not sure what view Veronika has, if she can see you. You can unmute and ask.
Okay. I just, we keep looking for presences. Like, if we're triggered, we say, I want to get to this place, where something else is present. Even if it's peace or calm or something, but it's really an absence to me. It's like just feeling happy, smiling, looking at the clouds while all this other stuff is going on, because it's the absence of all those conflicting feelings and emotions, new, old, or otherwise,
Yeah, Lisa, thank you for sharing that. It was nice to see you. I understand what you're saying. It's an absence of those emotions. However, and I understand that that's how you experience it when you're able to get into that place of presence. So I appreciate that you're able to share kind of a different way of experiencing it. What I will share, though, is that the way that I experience it is it's an absence of triggers, but it's a presence of present day emotions, and it's a tuning in and understanding what they mean. So it's not an absence of emotions because like I mentioned earlier, you want to have emotions because you want to.
Right. And I have positive. I mean, I'll feel like the sky is blue and I'm feeling very, happy and satisfied. So those are emotions. They're just,
yeah.
Yeah.
But even like anger, anxiety, sadness, those can also be indicators and they can also be useful. So not necessarily, I personally don't I don't have a desire to be absent of anger or absent of even anxiety. But it's just that they come up and you're like, it's an awareness. Ooh, I feel something in my stomach that feels like anxiety. That means that this person is not good for me. Okay, moving on. And then the anxiety moves through and it's gone.
right? I feel that as an energy that I try to redirect
Yes. And so
into
that's why you didn't talk about the energetic layers today, but
a that gives me a boost. Yeah.
yeah. You can redirect the energy. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, I want to address the conversation that's happening in the chat, and then we're going to wrap up because it's almost on the hour. So there was a comment here about, I can't find it now, but narcissists targeting people who are vulnerable. And then somebody said something about narcissists targeting people who are strong. So I want to share that briefly, because one of the things I was going to talk about is not being vulnerable to narcissists and understanding biology and how that factors into it. And I kind of ran out of time, but now we're going to dive into that really quick. So they target vulnerable people. Yeah, so this is the energetic piece that kind of Lisa's touching on and I've touched on as well, that we emit energy in all of our systems, our physical body, our mind, our emotions, and all these other things. Are sharing information with everyone around you, and you're receiving information from everyone around you. So people think about boundaries as being like very verbally strong, which can be important and is a factor. However, oftentimes boundaries are implemented when you are really present and confident and clear, and you're not in a state of fear or anxiety. And narcissists, for sure, and other types of personality disorders, they pick up, whether consciously or unconsciously, and there's a huge debate about whether they're conscious about it. It doesn't matter, because how they act is the same. So to me, it's completely irrelevant. Again, the word irrelevant, if a narcissist is conscious or unconscious about whether they're doing something. And I believe some are conscious and some aren't. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is that if you're in a vulnerable state of fear or anxiety or depression or things like that, people pleasing, right? That's a big one. Rescuing, narcissists can pick up on that. And there's a biology to that too. So if you notice, if you're someone who likes to walk out in nature and you're familiar with encountering bears and mountain lions, I'm curious if people here are. You can just put your hands up. Or I just did a post about roaring. You can put roar in the comment if you're somebody who goes out in nature and experiences bears or mountain lions. If you are, then you know that what you're told is that if you encounter a predator like a bear or mountain lion, what you're supposed to do is make yourself really big and fight. And if they attack you, to fight back. So and that's how you're most likely to survive. And the reason for that is not just because it sounds like, well, if I fight, then maybe I'll live. Sure, of course, there's a survival instinct, but it's because biologically, predators are not going to fight with other predators or other animal, not just predators, but animals that can pose risk to them, because it's a risk. It's why predators go after, the weak prey, the sick, the young, the ones that are off by themselves and not in the pack. It's because they attack something that's strong, the risk may outweigh the benefit. So you're only going to really see that happening if the benefit, the thing that they're fighting for is really important. Their offspring, for example, or limited food resource. So it does happen. Biologically, a predator is not going to attack something that fights back. And it's the same thing with manipulative people, with narcissists, with disordered people. They can feel, either they can literally see it because you're speaking your boundaries, or they can feel energetically your confidence and your high self-worth and all those things, and they're not going to attack. Because it's not worth the amount of effort they have to put into attacking you. It's not worth the benefit. Just like with a bear or a mountain lion. So that's why narcissists tend to go after vulnerable people, however you want to define that. People pleasing, being vulnerable, right? And I think that's why a lot of people who end up with narcissists who don't necessarily feel vulnerable, right? So I work with a lot of high achievers, successful people who seem confident in their work and things like that, but they have a vulnerability that can be easily exploited by the narcissist, like people pleasing, for example. So yes, narcissists will go after weak people, vulnerable people in that sense. At the same time, they do also tend to be with people that make them look good. So somebody said, I thought narcissists went after strong people. Depends on how you define strength, right? you're successful, you're beautiful, or you're outgoing, you're a creative, you have something that they desire. You're a good parent if parenting is their thing, right? Whatever their thing is, you're probably really good at it, and they can show you off. So it's both. And that's probably why people who find themselves in narcissistic relationships, it can be very confusing, because they tend to be these high value, high achieving people, because that's why the narcissist likes them. They also have a vulnerability, which is why the narcissist exploits them. So it's both. Yeah, Kathleen, I was both strong and vulnerable. All right. Thank you all so much for being here today. Oh, and Michelle's just going to share briefly, if you're interested in Freedom Foundations, but you're just not 100% sure and you want to connect with me personally to ask some questions, Michelle is sharing a link in the box to book some time with me to chat, and I can answer any questions that you may have. And I look forward to seeing y'all there at Freedom Foundations. Thank you so much for being here. You're welcome, Kathleen.
I just got that link in there right now, so just
I'll
give
stay
people
for
a
just
second.
a second if people want to look in the chat and grab that link.
Can I share a story while we're wrapping up?
Of course, Michelle.
I got a call from someone yesterday, and she's also an empath, total empath, huge heart. And I might even use this in an email. So, those of you who watch the replay might see the story again, because I've been writing some emails for Veronika. She invited some people to help her garden because she broke her hip last year. And they, now that it's fall, totally took advantage. She's got some fruit trees. They cleaned the trees dry, like every cherry, every apple. And she's someone who preserves and has her homemade fruit smoothies with their homegrown stuff from her freezer for the winter. So that was a really big deal for her, even though some people may be like, it's apples. But it was important for her. And the thing is, they never asked, they took them, they kind of lied. And she called me, she was very upset about this. And her intuition was right. Her body was right, but she didn't have the skills to recognize it. So what did she do? She started making excuses. Well, their first language is French, so maybe they didn't understand. And I'm like, oh, hell no. You don't go clean somebody's tree without asking or confirming and just have the stuff disappear.
Maybe you do in France.
No, well, they're from Quebec, so it's a little different. But I'm gonna guess that most honest people have better manners than that. I mean, just the people whose videos are on are like, oh no, I wouldn't do that. So the thing is, she's been an empath and doing work on herself probably 30 or 40 years, and she's still second guessing because she doesn't have all of these tools. And so that's the reason that I'm sharing it, because I know it took me a hell of a long time to start to really trust myself and a lot of work. And so if you're someone who's still in that, like Veronika was talking about, people pleasing, or, there was the comment before, I can't remember who it was, who was saying I started to believe the other person's lies instead of trusting myself. If you're in that, you're the one who needs Veronika's program.
Thank you, Michelle.
Take that, give it some deep thought, fully consider it, and then decide what's right for you. All right, so the link is up again, so you guys will get an email with the replays. Anything else you want to say before we sign off, Veronika?
No, thank you so much, Michelle, for sharing that, because that is 100% is that people make excuses. We all did it. I did it, and we had some people in the chat commenting on that, and it's learning how to be confident, learning how to be able to listen and act on your intuition. That's really important. So, yeah.
There was one question someone was asking to give more info about the course. There was the slide. There's also a link to.
Is there something particular you're looking for that that you haven't received? I see Jay. Could you give us some more info about the course? What kind of info are you looking for? Is there a specific question about it? So while I'm waiting for them to respond, I don't know, sometimes it's slow to respond. So the link that Michelle provided on that page has all the bullet points of what you're going to be learning. So if your question is, okay, lots of cool concepts today, but what am I actually going to walk away with? On that page are the bullet points of everything you're going to walk away with. And then also on that page, thank you, Michelle, for sharing it again, so it starts next Friday. We're going to meet weekly for 8 weeks. And everything's going to be available for you on a replay if you're not able to attend live. The cost today is $1,100, so you're saving over $200 if you sign up in the next 24 hours. And Jay says, I'm just wondering what it consists of, i.e. written, live, etc. Yeah, so there'll be live Zoom sessions like this. For each 6 of the times that we meet, you will get handouts that provide the content of the information. And then you'll have an experiential, like a practice for you to implement on your own. And those practices are like, Eric can attest to this, they're like 5 minutes, right, Eric? Eric, do you want to say anything about, so Eric, this course is a little bit different, but it's like the first 6 weeks of what you did, first 8 weeks of what you did.
Yeah, it really is
Oh, you have
huge.
to go.
Yeah, I do have to go.
I just saw your comment, Eric. Okay.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I've got like a few minutes, but yeah, it only takes a few minutes a day, and it really does make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what else to say. Just give it a chance and try it for yourself. I'm serious. It's like, okay, I know it might be a big chunk of money for some people, but still, like, it's definitely something I feel that's worth investing in yourself.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, no, you have to go to work. So thank you so much for that. Bye, Eric.
Okay, bye-bye.
So Jay, just to kind of respond again to what your question. So it's live sessions where there'll be a teaching kind of like today, and then we'll learn together the practice for that week. And then you will be able to implement it on your own. And as Eric mentioned, it's like a few minutes a day for you to do on your own. And then there's also opportunity for Q&A. So the sessions will be 90 minutes live and then recorded if you miss them. So hopefully that answers your question, Jay. Yeah, you're welcome. If anyone has any questions on that page that Michelle provided the link for, there's my email, and there's also a link to book a call with me. So if you have questions, just reach out, go to veronicaarcher.com, Freedom Foundations. Freedom Foundations is the name of the course. And you can send me an email or book a call with me. Thank you, Kathleen. You saw I posted on Facebook about my roaring. Yes, thank you, Kathleen. I will keep roaring. Thank you all for being here today. And I look forward to seeing you next Friday. Bye, y'all.